Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us for today's launch webinar for the third edition of the Nuclear Energy Agency Small Modular Reactor Dashboard. People from around the world have registered to participate in this event. To ensure a stable connection and considering the large number of attendees, your video and audio functions have been disabled. If you experience technical difficulties, please try the chat function. You can also listen in by telephone. The international numbers are in the confirmation email message that you've already received. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be made available online in the near future. It is now my pleasure to introduce Lucas Meir, Nuclear Energy Policy Analyst here at the NEA and Project Manager for this and the previous edition of the NEA Small Modular Reactor Dashboard. He will be today's master.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and welcome everyone. So this webinar is an opportunity to present the NEA's new publication on SMR progress worldwide. We will start with opening and scene-setting remarks by the Nuclear Energy Agency and the International Energy Agency. We will then present the key findings from the NEA SMR Dashboard and follow with a focus on two topics: financing SMRs and accelerating their deployment. We will close this webinar with a demonstration of the newly released NEA SMR Digital Dashboard. So without further ado, I'm pleased now to introduce William Magwood IV, Director General of the Nuclear Energy Agency, for his opening remarks. Mr. General, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lucas, and welcome to all of you to this very important webinar. We're extraordinarily pleased to be able to announce the launch of the third edition of the NEA Small Modular Reactor Dashboard. Over the last couple of years, this document has become really the global source for understanding the progress being made by small modular reactor designs all over the world. As you'll hear from my colleague, Deanne Cameron, this document exhaustively covers all of the technologies that are being pursued around the world, that at least those who were able to contribute information to us, and really serves as a mechanism for policymakers, industry, investors to understand what is really happening. As I talk to leaders around the world, there's a tremendous amount of interest in small modular reactors. And that's true both in OECD countries, where I think they have been seen largely as a way of complementing large reactors, working closely with renewables and other resources as a means to provide heat for industrial processes or remote communities. These are very exciting new applications, as well as interest in the global south, where we may see many countries that are interested in the attributes of small modular reactors: smaller capital costs, high safety characteristics. So there's a lot of excitement around the world about these technologies, but there's also a lot of questions. People often ask us, what technologies are coming? Which ones are real? Which ones will be available when we need them? And that really is the purpose of the Small Modular Reactor Dashboard, to answer those questions. But I think that you will find in this third edition that it provides even more information and more in-depth understanding about where these technologies are today and where they're going into the future. So as we go through today's webinar, giving our thoughts to all of you about the state of these technologies, I really draw your attention to the fact that as we look at the progress being made over the last few years, it's very evident that more small modular reactors are now in the regulatory processes. More of them are raising money from the private sector. More of them are beginning to have discussions about siting. So we're really seeing the progress taking place on the ground around the world, and it is very much an exciting time. So I will hand the floor back to Lucas, but to really leave all of you with the comment that we recognize there's still a lot of work ahead. There's still much to be done, but the promise is there and the opportunity is right before us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director General. So I'm now pleased to introduce Dennis Hessling, Head of the Gas, Coal and Power Market Division at the International Energy Agency, for scene-setting remarks on energy security and the role of nuclear energy. Mr. Hessling, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Thank you for the opportunity to be here at this Nuclear Energy Agency webinar on the SMR dashboard. It's really nice for us as the IEA to be able to participate here. As you may know, we have been working on nuclear for a couple of years, releasing several reports. The most recent one was in January this year, called A Path to a New Era for Nuclear Energy. And maybe it's interesting here to see, well, since the IEA has this all fuels and all technologies approach, how we then see the role of nuclear, as you said, with respect to energy security in particular. So we've been quite consistent over the years to say that nuclear has a role to play as a clean, dispatchable source of power and heat generation. It can be deployed at scale, is available 24/7. It's currently, if you look at the numbers globally, it's the second largest source of low emissions power generation after hydro. And we expect a record amount of power generation from nuclear in 2025. That is probably not new to most people here in this webinar. What is new or newish is the increased momentum we see in policy circles. We see much more support now than if you go back, let's say, 5 or 10 years. And the support is both for new builds and also for lifetime extensions, which of course are much cheaper and easier to realize. Energy security concerns, including those emerging from the 2022 gas crisis, certainly play a role here because many people see nuclear as a more secure way of providing power generation than many other sources. Now, specifically for SMRs, since it's the topic of this webinar here, we see them and we categorize them in our recent report as such as a catalyst for change. Because on the one hand, we see increased demand from the private sector. Traditionally, it's state-owned entities who invest in nuclear power generation, but we see many private companies, especially those active in data centers, who are looking for reliable, dispatchable, and clean power generation. And SMRs could just about fit this bill. The modular design has the potential to cut duration and cost significantly. If you look at the recent examples from the US, UK, Finland, France, there have been significant cost and time overruns in the construction of traditional nuclear power plants. And the SMRs with the modular design have the potential to really address this problem in a structural way. And also financially speaking, the break-even point is much sooner than for a traditional and really large investment. And that means that the financing becomes available to a much larger group of investors. If you look at our forecasting or our scenario analysis, we would see a potential for about 40 gigawatts of SMR capacity by 2050, and significantly more if the costs come down and the unit cost becomes similar to what we nowadays have for the big traditional nuclear reactors. One final thing I'd like to mention is the geopolitical implications of all this, because at the moment, in many areas of nuclear development, it's Russia and China who are leading the way. But if you look at the SMR development, the US is one of the leading countries, where there are currently, in our count, 22 designs which are competing to come to the market. And that brings me to the NEA SMR Dashboard, which I had the privilege of seeing before it's released. I find it very rich, very detailed. It's nicely complementary in its approach to the nuclear reports that we at the IEA have launched. And one thing that struck me there was this, the count of SMR design headquarters, where you clearly see that North America and Europe are the vast majority of where those SMR headquarters are located. And that means that it also has the potential, the SMR development has the potential to really shift and have important geopolitical implications. I will stop here and hand it back to you, Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hessling. And now, Jan Cameron, head of the Nuclear Technology Development and Economics Division at the OECD, will present key findings from the NEA SMR Dashboard third edition. Jan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lucas. And it's my pleasure to be here to share some of the key findings from the publication that we're launching today, the third edition of the NEA SMR Dashboard. Next slide, please. I hope you check out the publication. There's a lot of rich analysis in it and at least 70 figures. I've only selected a few of them to share with you today, but I hope it helps to paint a picture of some of the key trends that we're seeing. So to start, let me say that we have identified 127 SMRs around the world. This is up from 98 that we identified in 2024. So there is still a lot of new entrants that are coming into this space. 28 of those 127 are not under active development. They are paper reactors, and 25 additional which are not shown on this graph, are being deprioritized or maybe discontinued, which means that there are 74 SMRs that are shown here in shades of green that are under active development and that are detailed and carefully analyzed in the dashboard publication. And this is up from this is 74 in 2025, up from 56 in 2024. So this graph shows you the pipeline of progress from paper concept on the left-hand side in gray, 28 reactors that are not under development, to the darkest shade of green on the right-hand side, 7 reactors that are already operating or under construction. And then the pipeline from left to right in different shades of green shows you the SMRs that are making progress towards construction. So I mentioned 7 are already under construction or operating. That includes 2 in China, 1 in Russia, a test reactor in Japan, the Karam reactor in Argentina that's been under construction for about 10 years. But 2 new SMRs have joined this darkest shade of green on our graph this year, and that is the BWRX 300 by GE Vernova Hitachi that is being built in Canada, and the Hermes Kairos Power SMR that is being built in the United States. You see also 10 that are just 1 shade lighter of green that are approaching construction readiness. Next slide, please. So here we see a map of the global, this is a global industry. The dots on this map are the headquarters of the design organizations that are leading the development of the 74 SMR concepts around the world. It's a global footprint. There are headquarters on every continent except Australia and Antarctica. And we see the highest concentration of headquarters in the United States, 27 headquarters in the United States, followed by 10 in France, 6 in Japan, 5 in China, and 5 in Russia. Next slide, please. The concepts that these design organizations are advancing, it's a range of concepts. Some of them, as you can see on this chart, are water-cooled concepts that in some way build on the legacy technologies that are already deployed around the world, light water reactors. But you can also see that actually a majority of the concepts that are under development are advanced or generation 4 technologies, gas-cooled, metal-cooled, molten salt-cooled, or heat pipe-cooled. So this is really a very innovative space. Next slide, please. Here we're taking stock, of the neutron spectrums for these various concepts. Now, for those of you who, for whom this is a very technical topic, don't worry too much about it. Just to say that the majority of concepts are thermal spectrum reactors, which is what we have deployed around the world today, thermal spectrum reactors. But there is a critical mass of fast spectrum reactors that are under development. And this really signals an interest in taking a look at the fuel cycle and opportunities perhaps even to close the back end of the fuel cycle. Next slide, please. Another way in which all of these reactors represent a diversity of options is how they propose to be deployed. The majority propose to be deployed on land, but there are several that propose to be marine-based. And this is a combination of reactors that could be used for marine merchant shipping propulsion, or that could be deployed on a barge that is then anchored next to shore to provide power to the communities on shore. Several of them, some of the micro reactors, propose to be mobile. Now, this is a very technically difficult feature to accomplish, but you can see there are several there that are being developed with the aim of being mobile. And this could be useful, for example, in emergency response settings, or even for off-grid mines, where after the life of the mine after the lifetime of the mine, the right microreactor might be allowed to cool off, and in theory could be relocated to another mine site. None of these are proven yet, but this is the pipeline. This is all in the pipeline that is being developed for deployment. Turning to the next slide, please. This is my last slide to impress upon you the diversity of concepts that are under development. Across the horizontal axis, we see the range of sizes measured in megawatts thermal, from some very small units or micro units that could be on the order of a couple of megawatts thermal in size, all the way up to and exceeding 1,000 megawatts thermal at the other end of the spectrum here. On the vertical, we see a range of outlet temperatures. There's sort of a number of them hovering around 285 degrees Celsius, which is roughly the temperature that is provided by today's existing fleet. You see some low temperature reactors down to even as low as 100 degrees Celsius, which are being designed to be especially well suited to district energy systems, district heat systems. But you also see an enormous amount of activity to develop reactors that offer higher temperatures. Up to, and in some cases, trying to exceed even 1,000 degrees Celsius. On the horizontal dotted lines that we've graphed for you here in different colors indicate the temperature requirements for different heavy industries. So really, this is a range of sizes and a range of temperatures that are intended to meet different needs, different customer requirements in different sub-markets. Looking beyond power generation on grid to potentially providing different temperature solutions for heavy industries or micro solutions for off-grid. It's both, this diversity is both an opportunity and a challenge. It's an opportunity to meet a lot of different needs with a new set of offerings by the nuclear sector, but it's also a challenge in terms of deciding where to focus resources and attention first. Next slide, please. I'd like to now share with you some detailed findings on progress in specific areas, starting with siting. This is a map, turning to the map, please. This is a map of siting activities around the world. We are tracking 84 siting activities by 47 SMR design companies around the world, and that is an increase of 20% from 2024. The farthest advanced in siting are shown here with the lightest shade of green. Russia has two that are under construction or already completed, the Brest OD300 and the KLT40S. China has two also either under construction or completed, the ACP100 and the HTRPM. Japan has a test reactor, the HTTR, which is completed, and Argentina has the CAREM that has been under construction for some time. New in 2025, there are two projects that join this, this category of under construction, which are in the United States. And those are the Hermes SMR and the Project Pele, which is a micro unit for the Department of Defense. We are also seeing significant progress in the US by TerraPower, and in Canada, progress on the BWRX 300. Maybe one last comment about siting activities. So I focused in my examples on the lightest shades of green because those are where siting activities are most advanced. But the darker shades of blue on this map indicate earlier stages of negotiations with site owners. Could be feasibility studies, could be non-binding agreements. And you see a lot of siting activity, siting discussions happening with site owners in North America and in Europe. Not all of those sites will necessarily eventually host an SMR, but that volume of activity certainly indicates a level of investment and interest and a level of demand. Next slide, please. So here on this bar graph, We see, in addition to the volume of siting activities by country, we see, according to the color coding, that we are experiencing quite a wide variety of types of site owners. So this sector has historically been utility driven, and certainly commercial operations have typically been on utility-owned sites. But now we're seeing site owners that are utilities, but also government site owners, national laboratories. This is new. SMR developers purchasing land that they then own and they can then use to deploy their first of a kind for demonstration purposes. We also see universities coming into play here and other heavy industries choosing to site SMRs on land that they own. In terms of volume of siting activity, clearly the greatest volume is in the United States with 27 sites at play, in Canada with 9, the UK with 7, Russia with 5, and China with 4. Next slide, please. Through this analysis and the collection of data for the SMR dashboard, we collected evidence and evidence that leads us to conclude there are really 6 near-term markets that are already moving on SMRs. The first is to replace fossil fuels and provide cogeneration of heat and power for heavy industries. Also to replace fossil fuels for district energy systems, to replace coal on-grid for power generation, to replace diesel off-grid for mining operations, to replace diesel off-grid for communities, and to power data centers. All of the data that were used to create this graph that's on screen now, which identify those 6 near-term markets, are based on real contracts and agreements that are being struck between specific customers, site owners, and SMR companies in the real economy. The only exception to this is the data related to SMRs for data centers is based on agreements between customers and SMR companies. Those announcements are not site-specific at this time. So what we conclude from this is that the market is clearly starting to signal demand for a range of SMR technologies, here shown in different shades of purple, for different applications, with the highest demand being for water-cooled and gas-cooled technology concepts across these different applications. But we also see demand in the real economy for metal-cooled and molten salt-cooled technology concepts, whereas demand for heat pipe-cooled technologies does not yet appear to be quite as advanced. Next slide, please. So here we have the same data, but illustrated on a map. Siting activity for specific SMRs on specific sites for specific customers in those areas that I mentioned: cogeneration for heavy industry, mining, off-grid power, coal replacement, and district energy. Next slide, please. I'd like to now turn to progress in the area of licensing. Next slide. Here we are tracking 51 designs that are engaged in either pre-licensing or licensing activities with nuclear safety regulators in 15 different countries. The most advanced progress on licensing is seen in Russia and China, with Russia having one SMR already licensed to operate and 2 more licensed to construct. China having 1 license to operate and 1 license to construct. But we see considerable progress in North America and in Europe, and considerable momentum since 2024. In the United States, there are now 3 with licenses to construct approved. That's Project Pele, Kairos Power with their Hermes SMR, and now Natura Resources with an MSR1 molten salt SMR. And we see 2 others with license to construct approved or design certification application already submitted, and that's NuScale and TerraPower. In France, we see 1 with license to construct application submitted, and that's the Jimmy SMR. In Canada, 1 with the license to construct submitted, that's the BWRX 300. And in the UK, 1 with license to construct application submitted, that's the Rolls-Royce. So we're seeing sort of this groundswell of activity in both Europe and North America. Next slide, please. This is another way of reporting progress on licensing efforts. by concept type. So licenses to operate already approved for a few water-cooled and gas-cooled concepts, but it is really interesting to see that there's also progress on licensing efforts for molten salt and metal-cooled reactors. Next slide, please. I'll turn now briefly to supply chain. Next slide. This Sankey diagram on the left-hand side, you see the country where the headquarter is for the SMR. And on the right-hand side, the headquarter of a supply chain company that is supporting that SMR. So this tracks contracts and other types of agreements between SMR companies and supply chain companies. We see regional supply chains starting to emerge. In particular, strong supply chain linkages emerging between the US, Canada, UK, and Korea in one group, and in another group, strong supply chain linkages forming between France, Italy, the UK, and Belgium. Next slide, please. Another way of looking at this information on supply chain activities, on the left-hand side with the dark orange, you see supply chain contracts that are supporting SMRs with domestic headquarters. The greatest volume of activity here is in the United States, followed by France, China, Korea, and Russia. On the right-hand side, in the lighter shade of orange, you see supply chain contracts and activities supporting SMRs that have foreign or offshore headquarters. With the greatest volume here being in the UK, Canada, Italy, and Belgium. In Canada, for example, the BWRX 300 SMR has headquarters in the United States, but there's a construction project in Canada at the OPG Darlington site that is supported by significant supply chain activity from Canada. In Italy is another interesting example. Here we see Italian financiers that are investing in an SMR that has headquarters in France, but that in turn is engaging extensively the supply chain back in Italy. So this is evidence of a lot of different ways for nations to participate in the global supply chains for SMRs. Turning to fuel. Next, please. Next slide. We have identified 17 distinct fuel types. Next slide, please. 17 distinct fuel types, and they are listed on the right-hand side in 4 different sort of forms. Ceramics are shown in blues, metallic alloys are shown in oranges, molten salts in greens, and others in gray. This is quite a diversity of fuel types across the different concepts that are listed on the screen. Next slide. Now, in terms of uranium enrichment requirements, over 31 designs are proposing to use HALEU, high assay low enriched uranium, enriched between 10 and 20%. Another 8 are aiming to use what some are calling LEU plus, enriched between 5 and 10%. 24 are planning to use LEU enriched less than 5%. 11 are interesting because they propose to use fuels that do not depend on any enrichment capabilities or capacities. So this slide, combined with the previous slide, leads us to sort of conclude a few things. We're seeing a lot of innovation in fuel cycle. The implications of that are quite important. Some are planning to use existing fuels. They aim to benefit from existing supply chains and infrastructure, including with respect to waste management in the back end, and maybe betting on the fact that that will have a faster path to market. Others, however, are proposing quite a few innovative fuels to achieve different outcomes that they're seeking to achieve. Higher temperatures, in some cases, minimized waste streams as a driving motivation, safety by design, non-proliferation by design. This is all very interesting, but these fuels are not yet proven or qualified. There's no commercial supply for them. And there will be a lot of work that needs to be done to characterize the waste streams from these novel fuels, to create the infrastructure, and so on. And so these may have slower paths to market. Lastly, I'd like to turn to financing. I have just a couple slides remaining. We are tracking $15 billion in financing into SMRs around the world. That's 10 billion from public sources and 5 billion from private sector sources, with significant momentum in the private sector area in particular. We're tracking financing in different forms, grants, and they're shown in the various colors on the screen here, grants and equity investments, debt investments and loan guarantees, commercial contracts, and in purple, a small number of SMRs that are now publicly traded. We are seeing evidence of private sector financing, in particular, unlocking and starting to accelerate. Next slide, please. Water-cooled designs are receiving more financing than other concepts, but there's a significant amount of financing flowing to advanced reactor concepts, which is quite interesting. And it's especially interesting to see that metal-cooled concepts are receiving more financing right now than gas-cooled concepts, while molten salts and heat pipes are receiving smaller amounts of financing at this point. Now turning to my last slide. This is the pipeline of progress on financing, which is the basis upon which we conclude that 3 designs not only have their first of a kind fully financed, they have now pivoted and are starting to work on financing for fleet deployment, their second, third, fourth, and so on reactors. Those are in China, the HTRPM, which is already operational, and now they are working on financing for additional deployments. In Russia with the RITM 200S series, and in Canada with the BWRX 300, where the focus now has moved from the first unit at Darlington to all 4 units that are planned for Darlington. 10 reactors, 10 SMRs, have their first of a kind fully financed. I should mention the 3 that are now focused on fleet deployment, financing for fleet deployment. This is up from 2 designs in 2024. 10 that have their first of a kind fully financed. This is down from 11 in 2024, but that's because one of them has moved towards fleet deployment or fleet financing, excuse me. So the 10 that are fully financed include 2 in China, 3 in Russia, 3 in the United States. That's Project Pali, Hermes, and Kaleidos. And also HTTR in Japan, which is a test reactor, and Argentina has the Karam reactor, again, that's been under construction for some time. So that's my last slide. I just want to close with a few closing comments. Progress is clear in many areas: financing, siting, licensing, fuel availability, and supply chain. Analysis across the board reveals some trends that are worth noting. One is that Russia and China are still most advanced with respect to deployment, both water-cooled and advanced concepts, with a small number of designs, a smaller number of designs at a smaller number of sites, supported by vertically integrated supply chains, domestic financiers, and domestic fuel supply. But there's a very high volume of activity in North America and in Europe, in particular in pre-licensing and licensing, in siting activities, with financing, especially unlocking not only from public sources, but from private sector sources, and with supply chain contracts. We see evidence of acceleration of efforts, especially from the private sector in these areas. The US in particular is home to the majority of SMR headquarters, which is a way of anchoring intellectual property assets in the US economy. The US is also home to the greatest volume of financing that is flowing into the SMRs and the most extensive pipeline of pre-licensing and licensing activities, as well as supply chain activity. Having said that, so this is a very positive story to this point, but we also see evidence that 2 issues in particular may become rate-limiting factors for North America and Europe. Fuel availability, especially for the novel fuels, the SMRs aiming to use HALEU or TRISO or other innovative fuels, and human resources and workforce development are also issues that require careful attention in order to make sure that they don't become rate-limiting factors. So with that, I give the microphone back to Lucas. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share these insights.
Thank you very much, Jan, for this overview. And let us now open the conversation to experts' insight and perspective on financing SMRs. And for that, please welcome Lauren Claire Culver, Senior Specialist at the World Bank, Senior Energy Specialist at the World Bank. Mrs. Culver, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I want to start by thanking the NEA for this 3rd edition of their already very influential report, and now for expanding it with the interactive dashboard. It's a really great resource for everyone that's tracking the progress of SMR development. At the World Bank, we're very interested in the successful commercialization of SMRs. SMR technologies could expand the relevance of nuclear energy in developing countries. Our client countries have fast-growing demand for affordable, reliable energy to sustain economic growth and to reduce poverty. And increasingly, they'll need this energy to be firm and zero carbon. Among World Bank Group clients, conventional nuclear energy is limited to only a few economies. The smaller size of SMRs means the technology could be considered in future national plans and strategies. Nuclear may otherwise have been infeasible in these countries because of smaller grids and the risk to public debt sustainability. The diversity of SMR technology also expands the potential uses of energy beyond electricity generation on the grid, and this could expand the potential applications of nuclear and World Bank Group client countries. In re-engaging in nuclear energy, the World Bank is looking to overcome 4 barriers to nuclear deployment. We want to see more developing countries prepared for nuclear energy, more nuclear investments prepared for developing countries, more of these investments financed, and more development benefits coming from those investments. Nuclear energy, though, is not like other kinds of energy in many important ways, not least because of the need to manage the nuclear safety, security, and safeguards. This means the World Bank Group will not be engaging with nuclear in all of our client countries, but where nuclear technologies could contribute to the most affordable, reliable energy system, we want to help interested countries prepare. The World Bank will consider financing and advising clients that are wishing to put in place the strategies, policies, legal and regulatory frameworks, institutions, human resources, procurement approaches, markets, grids, and resilient infrastructure to enable the safe and secure use of nuclear energy. And though nuclear energy is unique, it does also have important similarities with other energy investments with which the World Bank has been supporting for decades. Energy infrastructure, of course, takes a considerable amount of time and resources to plan, and a project must be well prepared to succeed. Risks from construction through operation and decommissioning must be understood and managed with fair risk allocations and strong contracts. And here the dashboard provides important visibility on the approaches different SMR companies are taking to address common risks. Of course, financing an energy project only comes after the economics of the project and the sector are sound. And as the World Bank Group plans to help countries prepare projects for financing, we're watching closely the economics and deployments of SMRs. As the NEA report describes, the SMR industry is pivoting from economies of scale to economies of multiples. And countries wishing to benefit from affordable SMRs will have to prepare themselves for these economies of multiples. This is an area where the World Bank wants to engage over the coming years and will be greatly informed by NEA's work through the SMR dashboard. A final point I want to highlight is the benefit of this report in shedding light on the opportunities in the supply chain of SMRs. We see growing opportunities for companies in developing countries to contribute to advanced manufacturing and the production of needed materials in the supply chain of SMRs. Thanks again to NEA for inviting us to reflect on the importance of the dashboard. We look forward to working with you and other partners to help developing countries get ready for SMR fleet deployment and to get SMR investments ready to support countries' development goals.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Culver. So for additional views on financing SMRs, I'm pleased to now give the floor to James Schaefer, Senior Managing Director at Guggenheim Partners. Mr. Schaefer, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Great report by Diane and the NEA team. I thought that was really informative. So first of all, our work in this sector has been very broad in terms of the constituents that we're working with. We've helped raise private and public money for some of the OEMs. A lot of our work of late has been more on the deployment side, working with various customers, potential customers of SMRs and microreactors as well. We are seeing tremendous demand for any kind of baseload power. So there's a natural move towards natural gas now that the Trump administration is in office. But along with that, a lot of support for new nuclear. We believe that over time, the demand for baseload electrons is only going to continue to increase. Tech company, data center company, industrial demand for 24-hour-a-day clean electrons is only going to rise. And along with that, the price of electricity will rise. That's really important because one of the things that we observe is that it's going to be hard to commercialize some of these technology pathways. It's going to be expensive. Some of the companies have very large project sizes relative to the size of their capital bases. So access to capital is everything. What's really critical now and what we've been focused on are pulling together teams to create orders for a couple of different pathways. We believe that the tech and data center company involvement is critical, not only in terms of having appropriately priced long-term contracts, but also potentially equity during construction. We believe that the build, own, transfer model could be very applicable in the US and other countries where you have tech company equity, potentially Wall Street money, Wall Street equity coming in during the construction phase. And then at completion of these projects, you would then transfer the projects at a specific price, a set price. Not only are these projects large for the OEMs, but they're very large relative to the size of some of the companies that pretty much all of the companies looking to deploy these technology pathways. When you think about the tech company involvement here, you look at NVIDIA's market cap, you look at Google, Meta, the single market caps of any one of those entities is larger by 3 to 4 times the entire market cap of the electric power sector in North America, and 2 times that of Europe and North America. So it's going to be very important to marry the resources of certain entities with the capabilities of the OEMs and then the deployers and ultimate end users of these technology pathways. We are seeing significant progress made, especially among the large incumbents. I don't want to name names, but there's a set of entities that are publicly traded, and a couple are privately held that have very significant access to capital. We believe that some of the announcements to date they've been significant, but there's a lot that could happen in the next 6 months. So we're looking forward to these teams forming and then announcements being made, specifically purchase orders being made for various designs. So we're very optimistic that the trend that Diane identified, overall trend continues, but the real sign here of progress will be hard customer orders and multiple units being ordered at once. That's when we think there'll be a real break in this scene. Some of the younger companies that have public access to capital are very advantaged. We do believe that the public markets present a possible pathway for certain OEMs to go public and raise capital. It won't be for everybody. We also think that there is potentially some over-exuberance in the market in terms of how certain entities are valued. But that said, access to capital and continued robust interest in this sector will continue. It's not going to go away. And I go back to my original comments that demand for clean electrons is only rising, and along with that, prices. We see the markets being short power, and so therefore, we expect price increases on the grid, and in fact, maybe even shortages of power in certain regions. So this is a critical moment in time. There's progress being made. We're excited to be involved, and those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schaefer. Our next 2 speakers will now explore opportunities to accelerate deployment of SMRs. So please welcome Connor Kelly, Power and Utilities Decarbonization Software Lead from Microsoft, to discuss the potential for artificial intelligence to accelerate new energy technologies, including SMRs. Mr. Kelly, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the NEA for the opportunity to speak and to contribute to the report and the dashboard. I work on Microsoft's software partnerships and AI partnerships with the energy industry. And so as both an energy buyer and a technology partner, Microsoft sees nuclear and particularly SMRs as a crucial component in the decarbonization of the global economy, both from an economic opportunity point of view and from a climate change perspective. We believe this needs to go faster, much, much faster. Yet we see the intersection of AI, or artificial intelligence, and nuclear innovation as a decisive turning point in the energy transition. We believe that by aligning policy, technology, and talent, we can convert this AI revolution that we are seeing into a rapid, safe, and efficient rollout of clean energy led by SMRs across the globe. For some specific actions that we believe can be taken to embrace and accelerate these and kind of leverage the opportunity on the table, we think that now is the time to be investing in AI solutions. We're beginning to see tangible AI solutions to demonstrate significant progress, significant acceleration in the energy industry. And we think that both commercial industry and governments can be investing now to develop these specific tangible solutions. Secondly, we see data as a critical component in leveraging the opportunity of AI. Data is the foundation on which AI operates, but there are major accessibility challenges that constrain the leveraging of the full AI opportunity. Data is often inaccessible, it's behind paywalls, it's within silos, it's otherwise in formats, or it's not even digitalized to begin with. So we think that this is very worthy of investment in both public bodies and the private sector to make data available and accessible to be leveraged within AI to kind of radically enhance the value of that data in its contribution to the rollout of SMRs. Thirdly, around resource use. So we believe in minimizing resource use of AI infrastructure, design, and operations themselves. We believe that AI operations must align with global sustainability and decarbonization goals. And so we as a company certainly focus on making sure that AI is implemented as efficiently as possible. And so the benefits of using that AI far outweigh the resource use by the AI itself. And then finally, around workforce capacity, we think that cultivating AI fluency and expertise in existing workforces across the energy industry will unlock their potential and allow them to leverage this incredible power of AI to turbocharge their productivity and their contribution to the rollout and safe and efficient operation of new nuclear around the world. So from a specific opportunity point of view for power systems and clean energy technologies, so we think that the application of AI and its potential spans the whole way across data management, forecasting and optimization, predictive analytics and maintenance, workforce management, and everything in between. One specific area, just to give a tangible example of useful AI deployment. And so Microsoft are a member of the Repowering Coal Consortium, which aims to repower and decarbonize the global coal power plant fleet with SMRs. So this group of reactor manufacturers and utilities, they have raised permitting or licensing as a critical bottleneck in achieving this scale of rollout and also at the speed required for this rollout from both an economic opportunity and a climate change point of view. And so they see permitting as a key bottleneck here. And so we believe that generative AI can very significantly enhance the productivity of permitting operations, essentially unlocking this bottleneck to the very significant and fast rollout of SMRs globally. So the types of tasks in permitting operations that we believe generative AI can help with would be things like drafting complex regulatory documents. So this is often very complex, time-consuming. It requires retrieving very large data sets and summarizing them into the format required by the regulations for that particular permitting document. generative AI is very well placed to enhance the productivity of these types of tasks. And secondly, around querying large and complex data sets. So this is an excellent use of generative AI, which can really speed up those types of tasks of looking for precedents or technical information. Getting generative AI tools into the hands of the teams who are doing those operations can greatly speed them up. And then finally, in reviewing of very large permitting application documents, we believe that generative AI can greatly enhance the speed and also the safety of document reviews, both potentially by the industry or the applicant who are putting together those documents in a way that might find missing information or inconsistencies before they're submitted to regulators to avoid needless costs and of a round trip with the regulators, or indeed by regulators themselves to enhance the speed and the safety of regulatory reviews. So, in summary, Microsoft really sees nuclear as absolutely crucial for decarbonizing the global economy and unlocking significant and equitable economic progress globally. And we believe that AI has the potential to be transformational in accelerating this rollout. And we believe that investing now in areas like data access and preparation, in workforce development, and in tangible AI solution development can really unlock this opportunity at scale. And so thank you so much for the time to speak today. And so I'll hand it back over, and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. So I now give the floor to Daniel Poneman, who is a senior fellow at Harvard Kennedy School, Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs, and former US Deputy Secretary of Energy, to share his views on accelerating the deployment of SMRs. Mr. Poneman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lucas. And I want to thank Director General Bill Magwood and his outstanding team, Deanne Cameron, and all the people who worked together on this very important report. It's important to recognize not only this report, but NEA has provided just a tremendous resource to our international community. It's a unique place for government, industry, trade associations, and experts to convene, as we are now experiencing this webinar, share critical information, and help advance the cause of the responsible expansion of nuclear energy to meet the burgeoning needs of people all over the world. This is a time of both great challenge and opportunity for our industry. Challenge because the electricity needs of the world are growing, as we've heard already today, by leaps and bounds, stressing the ability of countries all over the world to meet these demands with clean, reliable, safe, affordable power. Of course, a lot of attention has gone recently, and for understandable reasons, as we're hearing today, to the AI revolution. And it's become conventional wisdom that in many respects, it is in fact power more than GPUs and chips and semiconductors that are the choke point on the deployment of the incredible benefits that are available from AI. And that brings us right to nuclear. And just to look at the United States alone, the projections say that from 24 gigawatts of data center demand last year, in the next 5 years, that demand is going to increase to 70 or 80 gigawatts, which is like 50 large-scale reactors. And when you look at that the world over, you can just begin to imagine the scale of the challenge we're facing here. But AI is not the only driver of increased electricity demand. The electrification of other sectors outside of traditional power generation, as we saw in the charts, industrialization applications that Deanne showed us a few minutes earlier, obviously the transportation system with electric vehicles, etc., heating and cooling around the global south. All of these factors contribute to the scale and the urgency of the need to deploy advanced nuclear reactors. That is why over 30 countries have now pledged to more than triple nuclear power by 2050. And this challenge presents an amazing opportunity for SMRs. And so therefore, on the key question of how to accelerate SMR deployment to meet these challenges, we need to address a number of factors beyond even some of those that have been mentioned so far. We just heard about the financing challenge and how to meet it from Jim Schaefer and Lauren Culver, and I just have to take my hat off to Lauren and Ajay Banga and the World Bank for a really tectonic decision recently to support nuclear. I think that's going to be a real game changer. And I note the discussions with World Bank at NEA last year on that very topic. And we just heard from Connor Keller, not only the huge demand signal coming from the hyperscalers, but the important acceleration to some of these bottleneck solutions that AI can help provide. So let me just dwell in the interest of time very quickly on three items here. Number one, we need responsible and efficient regulatory and licensing regimes to ensure the safety of that next generation of SMRs. As we all know, peer review is essential to effective licensing and regulation, and this dashboard actually provides a very handy and quick crosswalk among so many different licensing regimes. And there, I think we do need to bring in the opportunity presented by AI, as Connor Kelly just described to us, to actually make the review processes and the development and submission of regulatory packages hugely more efficient than ever has been experienced before. Second, we need a rapid expansion of the supply chain to support the deployment of SMRs. That means original equipment manufacturers, engineering and construction companies, training programs at all levels, from regulators and operators to engineers and craft labor. And it's absolutely critical and urgent that we ensure that there will be ample supplies of fuel, both low-enriched uranium fuels for the water-based reactors, as Deanne described a bit earlier, and obviously high-assay low-enriched uranium for the over 30 reactors that Deanne cited in this report as needing that new special kind of fuel. This dashboard is an incredibly one-stop shopping resource to show you which design needs which fuels, and again, in terms of figuring out from an investor perspective and from a regulatory perspective where those bottlenecks are, what has to be done to address those bottlenecks. This is going to be an incredibly powerful tool. Third, and this is in a way the most important, and I don't think it's been mentioned explicitly, but it's implicit in so much of what Deanne said earlier, we need to move from drafting and designing to digging and deploying. It is really exciting to have all these designs being pursued, but let's just face it, we collectively don't have the bandwidth to develop scores and scores of discrete licensing regimes and supply chains. We need to have a rigorous competition among all of these designs and then choose the best designs, not just on paper, but in practice, taking into account economic and regulatory factors. Given where we are in the industry, we're in a good place. It's good to have dozens of designs right now, but we're going to have a shakedown period, and there's going to be an important role for government to help in making some of these decisions, but there's going to be a critical role in terms of the private sector and the acid test of which designs can survive and prosper. I view today's SMR industry as akin to the automobile industry in the 1910s, when we had literally hundreds of companies with a wide range of technologies. By the 1940s, that number had come down to a few dozens of companies, and now we've seen, a further consolidation to a much more effective and efficient industry. We need to go through that kind of process here again today, and rapidly, if SMRs are going to really be able to meet some of these urgent and growing electricity demands and industrial processes demand and heating and cooling demands that would really represent their full potential, both in meeting the demands of today and tomorrow. This is obviously especially important for the Global South, where the unique attributes of SMRs in terms of their suitability to emerging markets, where perhaps large grids needed support to those for large traditional reactors are not present, or the particular demands of remote communities or special applications like mining and resource extraction will best be met by SMRs. So this report is a terrific resource to provide that one-stop shopping resource to governments, investors, and industry to review all of these leading designs now in development, and then build these designs and this SMR dashboard into their own decision-making models. The last thing I would say is that this new feature this time around of making the model interactive is really a game changer in how useful this report is, as you can now click on different variables and move around, rack and stack different reactors according to the different unique criteria and priorities of each of the stakeholders that are using this very important model. So again, sincere thanks to Director General Magwood, Deanne Cameron, the whole team at NEA for helping all of us in industry understand this very critical sector so much better. Thank you.
much, Mr. Boneman, and to all our speakers for their insights on financing and on accelerating SMRs. So to close this webinar, we plan to show a video demonstration of the NEA SMR Digital Dashboard, which was developed to complement NEA's publication. This platform gives open online access to NEA's comprehensive database on SMRs. However, due to lack of time, you will find the link in the chat. This demonstration video will also be posted on YouTube, and it will be accessible on the NEA SMR Digital Dashboard webpage. So I would like to thank again all our speakers today for their time and insights that complement NEA's analysis on SMR progress worldwide. Thank you to all who have listened in. We hope this new edition of the NEA SMR Dashboard and its digital version will be useful tools to support your learning, your analysis, and your decision making. I now return the floor back to Andrew to close this webinar.
Thank you all for participating in this webinar. Today's event has been recorded and will be available on the NEA website soon. The NEA SMR Dashboard is now available for download from the NEA website and at the addresses on your screen now. You can also follow the NEA on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and now Instagram. So to keep in touch with us and receive updates on our programs and events like this one, please do follow us on those platforms. Thank you and good afternoon.